Preacher 357 here, coming to you from my shop here, out here at the cleaning table. Unfortunately, it's dark outside. Just now got home. We've been out of town visiting relatives up around the Nashville area for Christmas, and we just got back here to the house, and so I decided to come out here to the shop and continue with the series on carry guns that I started last week. Last week we talked about my Model 642 Smith and Wesson, which I have affectionately named Smitty. And remember Smitty here, double action only revolver. It has the concealed hammer. Very good carry gun for a lot of reasons. We talked last week about how it is a good carry gun, but there are some issues with it being a first gun for people who are looking to conceal carry, and that it takes a lot of practice to be able to accurately shoot a double action revolver. Single action, which is the way a lot of people shoot revolvers, is very simple to shoot because the trigger is very light on a single action. Whether it's a single action only, like a Ruger Blackhawk, which I did a short little video on a few weeks ago, or whether it's a double action, single action, one that can shoot either way, as in most Smith and Wessons. Those revolvers can be shot either double action or single action. And if you cock the hammer back on those, it gives you a very, very light, crisp trigger pull, which is very easy to shoot. The double action revolver, though, in double action mode, is much different because it's a long trigger pull, because the trigger actually activates the hammer as well. Because on a revolver, it's the hammer falling forward that provides the energy to drive the firing pin into the primer of the cartridge to set the powder off, which then propels the projectile out of the barrel. And so with a revolver, that hammer has to fall. With a double action revolver, it's the trigger pull that actually pulls the hammer back that then allows it to fall, and the spring energy, the spring tension gives it the energy then to strike the primer of the cartridge and set it off. With the Smith and Wesson 642, what you have is a double action only. There are two different operations of the hammer on a revolver. Whether it's a single action, it has a single action sear. With a double action, you've got a double action sear, or with the ones that can fire either way, you have two different sears on that hammer. And the sear is what actually holds the hammer back, that keeps it from falling. It's that portion that connects into the mechanism from the trigger. And so with this here, you only have a double action sear on it. They cannot be fired in single action at all, but of course it also has a concealed hammer, which means you can't get to the hammer even if you wanted to. They also make a model of this called the Bodyguard, which would be a model 638. Not the Bodyguard as in the different versions that Smith & Wesson calls the Bodyguard now, but it was called the Bodyguard originally. Was the nickname for this type of revolver that had the shrouded hammer, which you could still pull back even though it was shrouded. This is the concealed hammer version. You can't get to the hammer. There's no way to get to the hammer. There is a hammer. It's inside. You'll hear people refer to these as hammerless, but they are not hammerless. They have a concealed hammer. These have a hammer inside. And as you can see, this is safe. There is no ammunition in this revolver. And so the hammer inside, when I pull this trigger, it rotates that cylinder, pulls the hammer back, and then it comes forward. And this has a floating firing pin in here. The firing pin on this one is not actually on the hammer. And it hits that floating firing pin, which is right in here, and drives it into the cartridge and sets off the primer, which then sets off the powder that's in that cartridge. And so this is a very safe gun in that sense, in that you can't grab the hammer accidentally and cock it, which makes it very light trigger, which could easily go off. It takes a deliberate pull. I mean, and it's a heavy trigger pull. I think it measures around 12 pounds from the factory. This one's been shot so much, it's probably around 10 if I had to guess. It's not nearly as heavy as it was when I first got it. But you can see having to do all of this, that mechanism that's required to turn this cylinder and pull that hammer back against the spring that's down in here. You're pulling against that spring tension as well. It makes it very heavy. It's not likely to go off in your pocket as a result. So it makes it very safe in that sense. You're not going to shoot yourself in the leg with this revolver unless you're just really negligent somehow or another. I mean, I can't hardly imagine that being the case. And so it's very good for a new shooter, a new carrier, someone who's just carrying a firearm, because it helps you with that learning curve. If you make mistakes, you're not going to pay for it in the same sense with this. If you make a mistake with a Glock, for example, a striker-fired pistol, and you're not careful enough, you can shoot yourself with them. And people have been known to do it. That's why it's called Glock leg sometimes when people shoot themselves while holstering or what have you. The clothing gets in between the trigger guard as you're holstering, and the force of holstering that weapon, you end up discharging the weapon usually into your leg or buttocks or wherever you manage to shoot yourself. If you're a pinless carrying, we won't talk about where you would shoot yourself. But you're not going to do that with this firearm. And so it's very, very safe in that regard. And that's one reason I chose it initially. And continuing on with that, I'm glad I did. Because one of the first holsters that I ever had for this gun, when I started carrying it, was this DeSantis holster. And these are nice little holsters, especially for a J-frame. There's nothing wrong with them. It's an inside the waistband holster that allows you to tuck in around it. Very good holster, fits right down in there. Very comfortable to carry. I like this holster. It does a great job a lot of times. The problem is the tension that holds this gun in place is from your waistband. When you stick it inside your waistband, you tighten your belt up around it, it doesn't come out. That is the retention that you get with this holster, is that it's inside the waistband and the belt is pushing against it right here and it holds it in place. Great. Until you go to the bathroom. Until you go to take your pants off, until you release that tension by loosening up your belt. And what actually happened to me after I first started carrying, this was very early on, is I was going to the restroom. And of course, we all know when you go to the restroom, you have to pull your pants down. And in the process of pulling my pants down, it flopped over, and guess what happened? The gun fell out. Now, being a man, I have been taught my entire life that you don't let things fall, right? If they throw a ball to you, you catch the ball. And men pride themselves on being able to catch things. That hand-eye coordination, we don't want to be looked at as being able to fumble things, right? We want to be very sure-handed. And so the natural reaction to something falling is you're going to catch it. And you're going to do your best to keep it from hitting the ground. And so I did that. It started falling, and I started doing this number. Now remember, this is unloaded. It's completely safe. I started doing this number right here. And I didn't let it fall. I caught that gun, and when I got it caught almost at the ground, it was like this right here, staring me in the face, and my finger was on the trigger like this right here. That's how I caught this gun. Now, luckily, it's a double-action revolver. It did not come even close to firing when it was in that position, because this trigger pull is so heavy and so long that even catching it like this right here, it didn't rotate the cylinder at all. No problem whatsoever. However, had this been a striker-fired gun, had it been a Glock, for example, just using that as an example because it's one of the most popular and one of the ones that people know so well, I very well might have shot myself in the head. This is serious. This is a matter of safety. If a gun starts to fall, you have to train yourself to let it drop. Let it drop. Do not try to catch a gun if you fumble it. If it starts falling, let it drop. They have drop safeties. Now, there have been some that they've had issues with, and if you've got a gun that you don't think is drop safe, for whatever reason, it's an old model or something before they started putting the firing pin or striker blocks or whatever in them, then don't carry that gun. Find you something else to carry. But these have drop safeties. If you drop this on the ground, well, just by nature of what kind of revolver this is, it doesn't even need a drop safety because the hammer is concealed. There's no way you're going to hit it and cause it to go into the primer, cause the firing pin to go into the primer. This is very safe. Most double action revolvers, single action revolvers, especially, with the hammer down, there's no way to do that. If the hammer's cocked, you wouldn't want to carry it like that anyway. But pretty much any modern gun is going to have drop safeties. If it drops on the ground, it's not going off. And if you've got a model that you think will, then get rid of it, or just don't carry it. It's a range toy at best. Then that is the long and the short of it. The fact is, I chose this gun because I didn't feel comfortable with striker fire guns at that time, and I'm glad I did. Because I made a mistake. I did something I should not have done when I was very new to carrying a firearm. And the fact that I had a double action revolver saved me, more than likely. Now, I don't know that for sure. It may have been the case that wouldn't have set the Glock off. I hope that would have been the case. But that's one of the things that keeps me up at night sometimes thinking about it. And if you're new to carrying a gun, it might be worthwhile to carry a double action revolver just for that sake, or carry anything that's double action. There are automatic semi-auto guns that are also double action on the first pull, double action, single action, or what have you, or some that are even double action only. But there is benefit in that for that sake. Of course, the best thing to do is to make sure you're well trained with whatever you have, so that you don't make the same mistake that I did. And that's why I'm telling you about it. That's why I'm admitting to the mistake. That's something men don't like to do. I don't like to have to do it either. But I made a mistake. But one of the things that came out of that incident was I went away from this. And there's nothing wrong with this, and especially for a double action revolver. But I said I don't want to have to deal with this thing falling out all the time. And I went to a Kydex Holster. This is Concealment Express, which at the time was one of the few that were making these kinds of holsters. There's tons of these out on the market now, tons of them. Lots of different makes and models, and any of them will work. I like the Concealment Express. I like the way these clips are made. You can slide them in, slide them off, take your gun off and on without ever having to remove the gun from the holster. It's wonderful. I stick this down in here, it ain't going nowhere. You can adjust the retention too. If you make it, you can make it where it's so tight you can hardly get the thing out of the holster. And I wouldn't recommend that, but you can. And so this is what I went to, was this Concealment Express holster. And then I went to pocket carry, which we talked about, the Alabama pocket holster, which is also a holster that's a Kydex. Can't get your finger in there to the trigger. I like this. Gives you the retention. Won't come out of your pocket if you're moving around or wearing sweatpants or whatever, unless the entire thing comes out of your pocket. And even then, it still comes out with holster and all. So I really like these. And the real benefit to these kinds of holsters with this kind of retention comes when you start carrying something other than a double action only revolver. Which brings me to carry gun number 2. The one that I carry the most besides Smitty. The one that I carry the most besides the double action on the revolver is Ruger LCP-2. I carry this gun quite a bit. It is a hammer fired gun, but it's one that's has a pre-cock to it. And we'll see here, this gun is unloaded. There's nothing in the chamber. There's no magazine in it. It's got a fairly short trigger pull. Not all that heavy either. It's a little heavier probably than a Glock. I don't know what it actually measures. It does have the little trigger safety on it as well, which is beneficial, so you can't grab it by the side. But when you work the slide on this, it cocks the hammer almost completely. I think there's not quite all the way to the back. You have to move it just a hair with the trigger, but not much. And it's much shorter, much lighter trigger pull. It doesn't take much at all. And it goes off. So when carrying something like this, I really like having the Kydex holster, especially for carrying it in the pocket, which is the primary way I carry this. I also have a Concealment Express holster that I do have with it because I carry this gun sometimes when I'm going traveling. This is the only one I actually had with me. I left Smitty at home. It hurt his feelings. He didn't like it, especially when I took a Ruger, because you know Smith and Wesson and Ruger, they don't get along. I try to keep the guns separate from each other because they tend to get into it. They don't like each other very much unless I have a Colt out, and then they'll, they gang up on the Colt because, neither one of them like Colt. You know how Colt is. They're a little stuck up. But, when it's just them two together, they don't get along very well. So Smitty was a little upset that I took the Ruger instead. But I took the Ruger for a very specific reason. And then sometimes when I carry the Ruger, I'll bring this Concealment Express holster as well to give me a little bit more option on how to carry it depending on what I'm wearing if it's the only gun I've got with me. Generally speaking, if I'm going to carry a gun on the waistband, whether it's inside the waistband or whatever, this is not going to be the one. This is the primary way that I carry this gun, is in this Concealment Express holster, for the very reason I don't want to drop this out of a holster. I actually do have a holster, this type of DeSantis holster for this Ruger, in case I wanted to tuck it in, but it's not one I like to use very much. If I'm going to use it, I have to make sure, if I have to go to the restroom or something, I take the gun out first before I sit down and before I take my pants off, because I don't want the thing to fall. I don't want it to drop out of these kind of holsters, and then I fumble around with it and end up like this right here, looking down the barrel of a gun with my finger on the trigger. So hopefully I know better than to try to catch it these days, and I've dropped some since then, and fortunately have known better than to even try to catch them anymore. But that instinct kicks in sometimes, and before you realize you shouldn't be trying to catch it, you're trying to catch it. And so that's why I like the Kydex. It doesn't fall out of it. You don't have to worry about that. Nothing's going to get in that trigger guard. There is a holster, which I didn't bring out here with me, that comes with the LCP2 from Ruger, and it's a soft holster. And it fits over it. It covers the trigger guard. But I found if I tried really hard, I could get my finger through the fabric and push the fabric in to that trigger. Now, is the likelihood of it ever happening to you while it's in your pocket carrying it, is that likelihood very high? No. Probably never going to happen, but it was enough of an issue that I said, I don't like that. I'd rather it be something that's a little stiffer. So a good leather inside the waistband or pocket holster would be my preference. But for pocket holsters, I already had the Alabama pocket holster for the 642, and that was what I wanted for the Ruger as well, and so that's what I bought. And that's what I carried in almost all the time. I carry Smitty probably 80% of the time. Nearly the other 20 is this one, almost. There's a few others we'll talk about that I do carry on occasion, but this is the primary one that I will carry other than Smitty. And I like this right here because you can't get to the trigger guard. You can't get through the trigger guard to the trigger to set this gun off. While it's in your pocket, you don't have to worry about something getting in there. It's very, very comfortable. It's very light. But the question is, why would I choose this one over this one for pocket carry? Why do I carry this sometimes and not this one? Especially when I know it makes this one so upset for me to leave him at home. Why would I do that to him? To a gun that I've admitted is pretty much my best friend, As sad as that sounds. I know that sounds sad. Sounds sad to me saying it. But this is one of my best friends right here. Been with me a long time. Why would I choose a Ruger LCP2 instead of Smitty? And the answer is because Smitty, he's kind of like me. He's a little fat in the middle. He got a little bit of girth to him. See that right there? And let's compare the two here. The Ruger's just a little bit thinner, right? Now, often I like the curves. I'm somebody who doesn't hate curves. And I don't mind them so much, and they tend to soften out the print. You don't print so much with a revolver because the roundness of it doesn't give you the impression through your clothing that it's a gun. It just looks rounded, which we are rounded, especially me. So I like that. The downside is you have to have a fairly loose pocket to pocket carry this gun. And my jeans have smaller pockets than my overalls or my cargo pants, which are the two main things I wear. I don't wear jeans all the time, which is why I can carry Smitty most of the time. The cargo pants I have very large pockets. He fits in there quite well. Plenty of room, works really well. My overalls have gigantic pockets, so it's no issue at all when I'm wearing overalls. My jeans, not as good a deal carrying this 642 in there. It will fit. Smitty will fit, but it's tighter than I like, and it's harder for me to get my hand in there to get a good draw. And so, you don't want to be fumbling around trying to get in your pants pocket if you need to pull a gun, because if you're in a situation where you really feel like you need to pull that gun out, you don't have time to fumble around trying to get your hand in your pocket. And he'll fit, but it's tighter than I like. Whereas the LCP2 is really thin, fits in. It's not as deep either, not as in this direction. And it's just an overall smaller gun and fits in jeans better, which I'm wearing right now. So I'm going to stand up and kind of show you the difference between the two. Now, I don't wear tight jeans. I'm not saying I wear tight jeans. I mean, that would be a bad thing for me to do. I'm a preacher. And being a big, burly, handsome man that I am, it would not be fair to women for me to wear tight pants and to give them that kind of temptation. Being a preacher and being happily married, my wife would probably not appreciate that, because women would have a hard time, and it said in the Bible that, you can resist any temptation. I believe that, but, some temptations are just more than I should put on other people. And, my wife, I think, is thankful that we don't, I shouldn't do that to people. I shouldn't do that to women. So I have to be modest, and modesty is a very important thing. So I don't wear tight pants. I'm not saying that. They just have smaller pockets. So I'm going to stand up here and kind of show you, and when I stand up, it's going to kind of be showing my midsection here. So if that's too much temptation for you, I mean, I know I'm a big, good-looking country boy. If it's too much temptation, look away. This is just for demonstration purposes now. Not trying to make anybody have any temptations here. But I'm going to stand up and kind of show you here. You can see my pants pocket here. I can put Smitty in there, and he fits, and it's not too bad. I can get down in there, and I can get him out. But at the same time, it's tighter than I like. Especially if I had just washed these jeans. I've been wearing these all day, and so they've stretched out a little bit. So they're not as tight as they would be when I first put them on. But reaching down in there, it's not as easy to get a hold of it as I like it to be, because these pants pockets are a little tighter than my cargo pants, which is what I wear most times. Whereas with the Ruger LCP2 here, it just fits down in very easy. I mean, there's tons of room in here. Tons of room in here. Can get it really easy. And so it's just a much better fit for me when I'm wearing these kind of pants. Which is why I carry the LCP2 on occasions when I am pocket carrying while wearing jeans. Now, some people will take a 642 like this or a J-frame or any kind of small snub nose, and they'll carry it in their back pocket. I know a lot of people that have talked about doing that, but my jean pockets are not big enough for that. I actually looked at that option, and in some pants I've done that on occasion. It's not a bad way to do it either, but I tend to like to have my wallet in the right side, and it feels funny to have my wallet on the other side. And I don't like that, but then again, my pants pockets on my jeans are just not quite big enough, and it kind of the grip kind of sticks out a little bit, so I don't like that. So that's why I went with the LCP2. Now they also have now the LCP Max, which is a double stack version of this. This only carries 6+1, where that carries 10+1. And I thought about going to that gun because this gun is very hard to shoot. This gun to me is much harder to shoot than this one is. Because even though it's got a lighter trigger, it's very, very small. And on top of that, the trigger pinches the mess out of my finger. If I shoot 50 rounds through this thing, I will have a blister on my finger from that thing pinching. So it's not very fun to train with either. But I still do it because you got to do it if you're going to carry it. But so I thought about going to that LCP Max. The only thing is, it's a little bit wider and a little bit bigger, which kind of defeats the purpose of carrying this gun at all. If I'm going to use a little bit bigger gun, I can go ahead and go with this anyway. Of course, with the LCP Max, you get more rounds than you will with this revolver. But if it was just a matter of which gun I would want to carry, if size was not the issue, then this is the one I'm probably going to carry anyway, unless I'm going to an area where I feel like I need something with a little bit more rounds for some reason, like if I was going to Memphis or something like that. I might take something other than that revolver, though the revolver is probably fine. If you look at what they say, the FBI statistics for whatever they're worth, a revolver is probably going to be good enough in over 90% of the cases, according to the research that I have seen, which I think was done by John Lott. In over 90% of the cases, just having the firearm without even firing a shot is sufficient to take care of any threat. So, you always hope that's going to be the case, that if you get in a situation where you feel like you need to defend yourself, just pulling the gun out will be good enough. You can't count on that. But you always hope that's going to be the case. But that's why I choose as my number 2 carry gun the Ruger LCP2, because of the size, because it fits very well into the system that I use with jeans. Now, obviously, if I'm in a situation where I don't need deep concealment, then that's where I start carrying some of my other guns, where I carry on the waistband or what have you. And in those situations, obviously, I still will carry this sometimes just because I'm so used to this gun, and he gets upset if I don't. But here's one I carry this gun in quite a bit on the waist, and I've got some others. And as I said, on some occasions I will carry this in the inside the waistband holster here, if it's the only gun I've carried with me on a short trip or something, and I don't want to pocket carry for whatever reason, then I may throw this on my belt with the Concealment Express holster. But I think I've covered all that I'd planned on covering with regard to part 2 of this. The Smith and Wesson 642, aka Smitty, my number 1. My Ruger LCP2 is my number 2, and I do carry this quite a bit. Also, I failed to mention, I put the Talon Pro grips on this one. If you can see that right there, a very textured, rubberized grip. I really like these. They really, really help you control a gun. Not just this gun, any gun. You can see how much I have actually carried this one inside the pocket, and that it's actually rubbed so much that some of the grip texture has come off of the back strap and the side right there from where it's rubbed from carrying inside the waistband. So even though I say I only carry this maybe less than 20% of the time, that's still quite a bit when you carry every single day, and it's seen a lot of time in my pocket. But this is my number 2. Appreciate you guys stopping by. God bless you, and we'll talk to you next time.